You believe the green paper in your wallet is a shield. You have been conditioned to cheer when the index rises. Strong dollar, strong America is a mathematical lie. Look at the rust on the bridge you drive over. While your currency gained muscle, your industrial backbone was stripped for parts. Since 1979, the purchasing power of the dollar stabilized, but 7.5 million manufacturing jobs vanished. They weren't stolen by competitors. They were evicted by the currency itself. Every time you celebrate the dollar's dominance, you are celebrating the exportation of your own labor. You are funding your own obsolescence. There is a parasite attached to the central ledger. It feeds on factories and excretes death. It requires the system to hollow out the core just to keep the periphery liquid. They call it global reserve status. I call it the suicide pact, the industrial base. The empty lot down the street is not a tragedy. It is the collateral damage of a rigid design flaw. Welcome to the autopsy. Rewind the tape to the moment the ink dried. The crime scene is a hotel in New Hampshire, July 1944. America stood as the undeniable workshop of the world. We held the goal, we forged the steel, and we set the price. A surplus nation defined by what it built. But the architects of the New World Order needed a lubricant. They designated the US dollar as the global standard. It was sold to the public as the ultimate badge of imperial power. But hidden in the mechanics was a lethal contradiction. To run the world's commerce, the world needs your currency. He realized that to provide enough dollars for global trade, the US must run a deficit. We had to push dollars out so other nations could use them for reserves. The only way to push dollars out is to buy foreign goods in. The system demanded we stop selling and start buying. The switch was flipped from producer to consumer. It wasn't a market failure. It was a systemic requirement. If the US stopped importing, the global economy would freeze without liquidity. So we dismantled the factories to keep the currency flowing. We agreed to bleed slowly so the world could circulate. The Allies were globalization and modernization. They told you that dirty industry was beneath a modern superpower. They replaced the factory floor with the financial district to hide the decay. But you cannot eat a credit default swap when the shelves are empty. They sold the engine to buy better upholstery. Open the hood and look at the gears. The official manual calls this comparative advantage. The banks tell you that a strong dollar is a safe haven. They claim it keeps inflation low and your purchasing power high. We print the paper, they send us the cars. But this logic is a velvet cage. Here is the flaw in the source code. To maintain the reserve status, the US must supply the world with dollars. If we export more than we import, we suck dollars out of the global system. To save the world economy, we must sabotage our own balance sheet. The system is rigged to punish the producer. This is the Dutch disease, weaponized by our own central bank. When the world demands dollars for safety, the value of the dollar spikes. This spike acts as a massive tariff on American-made goods. Your factory didn't fail because you were inefficient. It failed because the currency made your product 20% more expensive overnight. Success in finance requires failure in manufacturing. The incentives force capital to migrate. Why build a factory, high risk, low margin, when you can arbitrage the currency? The mechanism directs investment into Wall Street. not Main Street. It turns the economy from a creation engine into an asset bubble. We stopped making things and started making financial instruments. Now, visualize the physical analogy. Imagine a casino where the house chips are the only legal tender in town. For the gamblers to play, they need chips. The only way for them to get chips is if the house loses every hand. The house must go bankrupt so the game can continue. If the house tries to win, run a trade surplus, the game will go broke and lose. So the house is structurally forced to bleed chips forever. We trade our real assets for our own paper returning home. We are selling the furniture to pay the rent. This is not a temporary glitch. It is a feedback loop of deindustrialization. The more the world grows, the more dollars they need. The more dollars they need, the deeper our deficit must go. The larger the empire, the deeper the hole. The bankers call it liquidity provision. The factory worker calls it foreclosure. Math does not care about your job. It only cares about the solvent flow of the ledger. The machine eats the host to feed the network. The spreadsheet error is now bleeding into the street. We must trace the damage radius through 3 distinct zones. It starts with the obsolescence of the individual producer. When the factory leaves, a high-wage value-add job vanishes with it. You are forced to migrate from the production line to the service counter. You stopped building assets and started serving the asset holders. The skill set of a nation begins to atrophy. This is the psychological cost of the gig economy shift. A machinist accumulates capital through specialized knowledge and tenure. A delivery driver is interchangeable, disposable, and perpetually insecure. For labor has been commoditized down to the lowest fluctuating unit. Agency is lost when you become an app-dependent variable. Now, look at the fracture in the family unit. The middle class is maintaining a facade using cheap credit. The strong dollar makes flat-screen TVs cheap, masking the reality. But the cost of non-tradable goods, housing, healthcare, education, skyrockets. The cheap imports are a sedative for the falling real wage. We accepted cheap plastic as a distraction from expenses. The stability of the household is now tied to the credit cycle. One income used to support a home. Now, 2 incomes fairly service the interest. The stress of this solvency trap corrodes relationships and delays family formation. The home is no longer a castle. It is a leveraged liability. The family is no longer a unit of production, but a unit of consumption. Finally, the structural rot of the society itself. The arsenal of democracy has been sold for scrap metal. We realized during the supply chain shocks that we cannot produce essentials. Antibiotics, microchips, and high-grade steel are all sourced externally. We have outsourced our survival mechanisms to the very nations holding our debt. A superpower that cannot supply itself is functionally a colony. The infrastructure of innovation has also been severed. You cannot innovate on a product you do not physically manufacture. R&D follows the factory. When the machines leave, the engineers follow. We are losing the industrial commons required to invent the next era. We are left with financial engineering, while others master material engineering. We traded the future for a quarterly earnings report. The sonar ping is warning of a hull breach. This is not just about money, It is about physical capability. A service economy cannot surge production in a crisis. We have optimized for financial efficiency at the cost of existential resilience. The ledger is full, but the warehouse is empty. The illusion of the strong dollar is a cage for your potential. You must stop measuring your wealth
in units that are designed to bleed.
It wants you to trade your finite time for infinite paper. Reject the role of the consumer and reclaim the mantle of the producer. Do not wait for the policy to change from the top down. You must build your own personal industrial base today. Acquire skills that cannot be inflated away or offshore to a server. Own productive assets, land, tools, business equity that generate real value. Holding cash is betting on the arsonist to put out the fire. Become the central bank of your own life. Shift your mindset from purchasing power to production power. When you create value that is tangible, you effectively exit the casino. You stop playing their game of Monopoly and start building real houses. Let the currency fluctuate. Let the deficits run their course. You are no longer anchored to the sinking ship of the deficit mechanism. The era of the paper empire is fraying at the edges. But the era of the sovereign producer is just beginning. Do not hoard the paper. Own the machine that prints the reality.